below, follow Enso Build and OQ Trade. So these are our social media handles. Follow us in Twitter, follow us in join our Discord page, and we also have a Telegram where you can join us if you're a builder and you want to ask builder questions. So as I previously mentioned, every 2 weeks we have a different project that we showcase, and this week we are happy to invite Gary Hill, who is the CEO of OQ Trade, which is one of the projects that we have worked for a very long time with. And today we'd like to showcase a demo and to let you know more about what OQ is and exactly how Enso is working with OQ. And with here, I also have Nanat, who is our DevRel at Enso. And for me, I'm doing BD at Enso. So the structure of this podcast is going to be a quick introduction to Gary and Oku, and then an introduction for Nanette and what he's doing at Enso, and introduction to Enso as well. And then we will move into a live demo of what OQ is, and we can see from sharing screen. Gary will share screen with you of how Enso is plugged into OQ. We will run through how it looks like at the front end and how it works at the back end. And then to end it off all, we will take live questions from the audiences. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments or to let us know in Discord. So and also same for the audience who come from OQ's community. Please feel free to ask us. And if you are a developer and you would like to build something similar, or you have any other questions, feel free to drop us a message as well. We will run through all these audience questions at the end of the session. So, very happy to have all of you here. To start it off, let's maybe let Gary explain what is OQ. Maybe give a brief introduction about yourself as well, your background, how you came to start OQ.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks guys for having me here this morning. I appreciate it. To give you guys a little context on myself, the company, OQ got started. It's been a project over here at GFX Labs for about 2 years being live, and then got kind of a year in development or so. GFX Labs is the parent company over here. And so we have our GFX Labs arm that does some protocol governance work, and I think we're pretty well known for that. But OQ is really our predominant focus. And when it comes to OQ, our core goal from day one to now and to what I think it will be in the future has always been, always will be, closing this gap between centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges. Everyone in the industry, particularly the folks probably listening to this, know that the DeFi UX of an average platform, OQ, etc., does not really even compare still to what a Binance or a Coinbase offers. And there's still this huge gap. And so our goal is to really say, let's partner with the best protocols, infrastructure that's out there, and let our team really focus on integrating these protocols and infrastructure into one seamless user experience that everyone can tap into. So kind of multiple verticals inside the platform. Swapping is without a doubt, and I'm sure that's what we'll be talking mostly about here today, is our primary one, our swap aggregator. We have our bridge aggregator as well, and these are our two main things. But we also have on-off ramping in OQ, because it's important that if we're going to compete with centralized exchanges, that people have a way to actually on-ramp and off-ramp their funds. So that's available in dollars and in euros, and we'll be adding pesos soon. We have, of course, our Uniswap DAO partnership, where we've helped the Uniswap DAO expand their protocol V3 to over 3 dozen new chains. So we've been really heavy on network expansion with them to try to keep an edge in the Uniswap territory. And then more recently, we've expanded into the Morpho side as well, which maybe we'll talk a little bit about today as well, where we've been helping the Morpho team with their chain expansion. And we've taken Morpho to World Chain, Core, and we have several more coming in the next few months. So as just a little context on OQ, and then just briefly on myself, we've been running now this company for the last 4 years. And prior to that, my background's on prop and delta neutral trading. So a lot of this is home for us. My co-founder and I, we spent a lot of time using DeFi at our old kind of career, and then now we get to be building it, which is a lot of fun. So yeah, thanks guys for having me here. Excited to chat some more.
All right. Thank you, Gary, for giving us a little bit of background on OQ and yourself. My name is Nenad. I'm developer relations in Enso, and that can mean a lot of things. So I'm mostly focusing on writing the developer documentation, building out like a use case libraries and stuff like that to help people integrate Enso as easily as possible, including like some SDK work and stuff like that. So whatever devs need to get moving easier and faster, this is something that, well, that's my job to make it. And I would just like to take a couple of moments to briefly talk about what Enso is and how that sort of fits in the way that Enso supports Oku. So the usual way we talk about Enso is that it's the shortcuts for blockchain, which means that you can create very sophisticated workflows that operate between different DeFi protocols, moving assets around, even bridging, even recursively bridging, which means I'm going to bridge it, put it in a protocol, bridge it to another chain, and so on and so on. So you can do like really crazy transformations of assets between different chains and like your original chain. So that's what Enso lets people build. And what Enso is, it's a set of APIs and an SDK to access it that allows developers to build those kind of workflows and simply have a more expressive way to create such transformations of assets. So that's pretty much what Enso is.
Right. I'd like to ask Getty, how long have you been using Enso for? Was it since day one? Um, Tell us more a bit about how you discovered Enso, how the relationship started, and how it has progressed and evolved till today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, from our side, the Oku platform is like a living organism that is constantly evolving and has particularly evolved pretty significantly over the last 2 years. When we initially launched Oku, there was actually no aggregator in the platform. We only used the Uniswap router. And so for a bit of like funny history for folks, we had built Oku initially, and it was thanks to a grant that we had received from the Uniswap Foundation to really tackle this problem that I was mentioning before about closing this gap between centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges. But we felt it was still important that as we created the interface and we built this out, that we would direct as much as possible of the order flow directly to the Uniswap protocol. And so we were using the first, I don't know, 7-8 months, just the Uniswap router, and it got nowhere. Essentially, like what we found was that at this point, even though the Uniswap Labs interface was also kind of doing the same, where they were just sending flow to Uniswap, people at this point, I mean, this was 2023. People were used to using a 1-inch aggregator or going to another platform. Like the concept of meta aggregator didn't quite exist yet, but like aggregators certainly did. And it just made our platform not competitive. And once we saw the Uniswap Labs develop their Uniswap X, and we're like, okay, if they're moving away from sending all of their order flow to the Uniswap protocol and using this new Uniswap and X Intends thing, then that at least makes us feel a bit better about saying, look, if we want this platform, this Oku, to be successful, we need to open it up. And so in March, we launched the first order routing system where we brought in multiple routers. And I think Enso was one of them, but honestly, my memory's a little fuzzy on all the things that have happened in the last 2 years. But I think Enso was one of them from like very, very early on, and that we were bringing in some of the top routers into the platform. And this is where we really saw from a user standpoint our like first big inflection point in swap volume. I mean, up until this point, for the first 6 months of Oku, we did maybe like, I don't know, a few $1 million worth of volume altogether. And once we hit this point, now it's like, oh, okay, we had our first month, we're doing $10 million. And then the next month's doing $20 million. And like now we're on a real path. Once we had, some of these advanced order routing systems in here, giving people competitive quotes, because this was really the user base that we were going after. And that still is the user base we're going after. So it's been a long time. I think we've had Enso on the platform without a doubt. And it's been an important part of Oku's growth to have Enso in the platform.
Yeah, so for ourselves, we we pride ourselves on providing the best execution that we can for our partners as well. Maybe Nana can expand a bit on that, how we work to give best routing, and how we work with partners similar to yourselves, like aggregators, and yeah, how this plugs in conveniently.
Yeah. So one thing that the Enso team relentlessly does, we're working on optimizing, well, our optimizer, the path finding, the route finding heart of Enso. So we're continuously finding ways to come to the better routes. And with that, there's an ongoing improvement process happening in there. Now, on the other hand, platforms such as Oku that bring several different route providers, well, that's also our chance to get signals where we can improve things. So you can have, a good let's say improvement without getting the right signals and without getting the right inputs. So those two are really necessary to come to a solution such as that.
Yeah, we have some special routes as well because Gary mentioned that they have many different aggregators, right? As a meta aggregator, you integrate many different aggregators, and these are like aggregators of Texas. But we do have some special routes. I think Nana can tell a bit more about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you guys definitely do. And this is something that, like, as we've been building out our feature roadmap over here, we've been trying to figure out where we can slot in some of these interesting things, particularly, and I kind of mentioned this before, like maybe we should talk a bit about morpho and some of these other things. This is something that is very unique to Enso that we've only seen, only a couple other folks do, and it seems like you guys are doing the best job at it.
Yeah.
How did you discover that we even have these special routes?
You guys messaged me and you were like, we have these things, you should come use them. And I was like, oh man, we probably should use them. So I mean, this is like the classic thing where like we have so many folks that are constantly messaging us like some things, but on the grand scheme of things, not most of what people send us is not interesting. A lot of it's like new routers messaging us being like, hey, I promise we're the new top router. And we're like, okay, let's see like any data that supports that claim and we'll add you to the thing. And because that's what we're up to. Like we're representing our user base, and we want to make sure that when our user comes to the platform that we're making the routers fight for them and flipping this, right? Because if you go back a few years before the era of like the meta aggregator, it was kind of like you had this religious experience that you picked like your favorite order routing system and you would just always go there. And this is kind of still what happens today with like CowSwap or like 1inch, where like these things aren't actually even that good or that competitive in the grand scheme of things, but folks have these religious beliefs that they are the best without any data. And it's like the year is 2025, folks. You can come to an Oku, you can see the performance of every single router for every route, and they're all going to compete to give you the best performance on that price. And I think that's particularly where like teams like yours have latched on to this idea, which is the perfect idea, that you don't need a robust user interface. That's not your core domain. And similarly, it's not our core domain to come in and build these routers and all the underlying infrastructure that you guys are building. And instead, it is much more efficient for our team to focus on the front end, for your team to focus on the protocol side, and for us to best link up and deliver this great user experience by combining these two things. This is like, in my mind, the very much like end result, or where the industry is going over the next few years, is you're going to have teams particularly be good at front end, particularly be good at the protocol, particularly good at the chain layer, and that all these folks will coordinate, because it's the DeFi Lego thesis that I absolutely love. They're all going to coordinate to build this one great thing. And that's just not impossible in the Web 2 world, which is what makes this industry so exciting. So sorry, that was a little tangent, but I think that's like so important. And it is like one of the cooler things that differentiates you guys from a lot of the other routers that we integrate, is they don't have any of these interesting features. They aren't really experimenting with the same degree that you guys are.
Thanks for your high praise. Sounds very good, but I think people who don't know Enso well, or people who don't know OQ well, they still haven't a clue about what these special routes are. I think that you gotta shed a bit of light on that.
Yeah, definitely. So when we talk about those routes, like you can imagine they could be useful for almost any, let's say, domain or vertical in DeFi, starting from wallets, lending markets, perps, and so on. So for example, when we talk about lending markets, like the one of the early use cases was zapping into a vault, which meant that you don't need to have in your portfolio a particular token to be able to deposit into that vault. So you could practically enter from any token. And of course, like basic operations like withdrawing and swapping, those are obvious in there. But things like collateral swapping, position migration, zap to repay an existing debt. Now, those are the routes that save several steps, both manually and programmatically. And some of those are slightly more complex. They require a bit more of dev work with bundles, but what people usually go for is the bundle. But usually the route API, which is way simpler, can be effective to solve majority of these use cases. So use cases like that are those special routes that seem to be undiscovered by the people that simply let you do stuff more effectively, like I mentioned.
Nod, what's your guys' most popular route, or what's the thing? I guess if I could ask you two questions, what's the most popular like non-standard route that you see folks using Enso for? And then a second question, what's the one that you think should be the top one that might not actually be the top one right now?
Okay. Well, to answer the second one, I can't really tell you which one I would like to become the top one, because like all of those are really handy and really useful. Maybe Lindy has a preference there. But for the first question, zapping into vaults was one of the most used routes that we have, and we love that route, but it's time for other routes to bubble up. Lindy, what do you think? What should be the top route?
The most popular route that I have seen are deposits into morpho, which actually a lot come from OQ as well. So you don't have a page really. So actually where Enso is aggregated in is your swap tab. And it isn't, the swap tab, it just displays token A to token B. And it doesn't explicitly say that you can deposit into morpho vaults. But surprisingly, people are searching for the receipt token of the morpho vault, and they are getting the route. And I'm supposing that is more, I mean, I see it more frequently because it's a direct route. It's a simple zap deposit and then minting of the receipt token. But to answer the second part of your question, what I see that what I feel that people should use more of is bundles. So things like maybe auto compounding or rebalancing according to certain market conditions, according to certain triggers, and then you execute a string of events, or maybe something more complex, such as collateral swaps. I mean, you have swap platform. Why can't you have collateral swaps? Why can't you have debt swaps? Sure, you can do it. Maybe it's a bit more complicated, but it's an edge above other aggregators who only aggregate swaps. So yeah, that is something that I would really like to see people build out more and to use Enso routes for it, instead of the simplest thing, which is the route endpoint, which is token A to token B. And interestingly, Getty, you mentioned morpho. We'd like to hear a bit more about that.
Yes, and just real quick, when you were saying before about the morpho and folks searching for receipt tokens, that's actually how I found out that Enso even supported morpho like this, because I was looking through some of our analytics and our trade history, and someone had swapped, I think it was like literally like $1 million from USDC into like this random token. And I was like, what is this token that someone is swapping into? And I'm looking at like a Etherscan to figure out what it is. And I was like, this is morpho. I was like, this guy just like deposited into morpho via RUI, swapping into it. I didn't even know you could do this with our platform. And so that was one of the cool moments where I was like, oh, wow, like we've enabled this thing that I'm not even aware of, which is kind of neat. It's fun that when that happens. But yeah, on morpho, so if folks go to oku.trade, you'll see in our platform that our core offerings that swap bridge ramp. But at the top, there's a button that says morpho, and you're going to see our access for Ethereum, Base, World Chain, and Corn. Now, I'm going to double click on World Chain and Corn because these are probably the most interesting ones. Base and Ethereum are already pretty well built out. We've been working with the World Chain folks on getting their DeFi ecosystem up from 0 to 1, which has been a lot of fun and super productive with them. If you go over there and you're a current ETH holder or wrap Bitcoin holder and you want to borrow dollars against these things, it's the easiest place to do it. And it's the absolute best value. The incentives over there that are available to folks are immense. And then what they're doing, which is, sorry for a little tangent here, but they're doing this really cool thing that I've seen no one else do in DeFi as far as incentives, where if you're a world chain verified user, if you're a human, have gone and done the verification process, you're eligible for a second pot of rewards that are just for humans. On the World Chain app. So that's been pretty neat. We're in the process of building our own mini app. Hopefully we can get Enso plugged in over there. There'll actually be some fun things with morpho. So I'm hopeful that would be a nice thing for all of us to try out. I suppose, Lindy, do you think I should mention some more general things and what morpho exactly is? Because I'm now realizing I just assumed folks would know that, but that's probably a bad assumption.
I think what you said is really interesting. I guess people already know what morpho is. It's just general lending, but what you provide is something additional, and especially with World Chain, the additional round of rewards, which I didn't know, is news to me. Recently, we've also been seeing a lot of people, because of the campaigns, pre-liquidity, pre-mainnet liquidity campaigns, and all sorts of different campaigns with different blockchains vying for TVL. We also are seeing more people use Enso's actions with new actions like claiming and auto compounding, or claim rewards and then deposit again for another round of rewards. So I think this is something that Nana has been working on as well. Maybe Nana, you want to share with us a bit about your what's coming up, the recent developments in Enso, and how do you think what would be more relevant to what Gary mentioned about his morpho plans?
Yeah, so in the context of all of that, including the pre-mainnet TG and stuff like that, so we talked about this the last time we released what we call Omnimint, which is recursive cross-chain operations with Enso, and there's been of course more strengthening of that based on the feedback that users give. So that pretty much fits the pre-mainnet launch thing that just lets you accumulate assets and prepare them for the mainnet launch. So that is one area where Enso is working hard on, and of course, adding more functionality to the very cross-chain bridging. For example, we launched that with just one bridging as a possibility, and soon enough it followed with the recursive bridging, where you can bridge from one chain to another, to next, and so on. On the other hand, as we just chatted a moment ago, people just assume it's swapping token A to token B, and as you said, Lindy, it can be much more than that. So the simple route can do various things with vaults and different liquidity positions. But of course, there are use cases and the way to use the route API and the bundle API and create different blueprints for transactions. And this is something that we're working on to make it more familiar to the people, and without those Lego blocks, let's say, because this is really a tool that lets you compose different Legos and just play them as play them when somebody needs to move some stuff around.
Yeah, that's really cool. We've been talking for so long. Why don't let's show the audience a live preview of your front end?
Let's do it. Okay, share screen. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So for folks who are following along here and watching the stream, the single best thing to do at this moment is actually to not watch my stream. It is to go to your browser, it is to type in oku.trade, it is to go to the site and just use the thing yourself, because it is going to be far more interesting for you to play around with it and experiment it. But let me run through some of the interesting things that we're doing on here, because there are several. We're on the main swap page. We have your swap bridge ramp all in one spot here. At the top header, you got your pro page. We're actually going to be adding some advanced order types, which I'm really excited about. But we can chat some more about that later. We have all your Uniswap V3 functionality. So that's your pool, a dashboard, LP management, etc., our analytics, morpho, and then we have a new profile page, which is actually kind of a nice place for folks to manage all their advanced user settings. We'll be adding some other fun stuff there as well. We have in this swap window here, I've already gone ahead and requested a quote just so we have something to look at immediately. But a couple interesting things that are happening here. First off is that you're noticing that there's many routes here on the right hand side. And you're noticing that there's also this new lightning bolt symbol that we just added. All the routes on Oku, and we're rolling this out to new chains. This is like a brand new feature that we just pushed out last week, are getting simulated now. If there's a little lightning bolt there, that means that the route's been simulated. That means the route that the router has sent to us, we've actually gone ahead and checked to see what is the true output of this thing if you were to execute it at this instant, and also that it is a passing route. One of the things that we run into prior to this was that users would come to execute a route, maybe the router, and Enso has never done this, but we've had some other ones do this where they'll pretend that the number that you're going to get is actually a bit higher than it is in reality, such that they know it'll get ranked up here as the top one. And then you'll go to execute it, it won't actually be as good as what they said it was. And so we've had to call out a few routers that they've been playing some funny games. And so we've added this as like our foolproof method of, okay, rather than take their word for whatever the output is, let's make sure that the user gets the full picture immediately. So we have all these routers here. We have the simulated quotes. Routes will kind of load in. And then down here at the bottom, we have our history section. The history section is really fantastic. So for users that have done trades on Oku previously, you can see the router that you use, the chain that you're on, your sell, your buy token, your transaction has associated with that trade, and the price that you did your trade in your history. So when it comes time to do your taxes at the end of the year, you have a robust place with all your trading history, which is very handy, particularly if you're using many wallets. And maybe I think other folks like myself probably aren't really doing a lot of their tracking for taxes until taxes are due. So it makes life a lot easier instead of having to go through the blockchain and try to find all sorts of places. So for folks who want to see what we all support, we just redid our chain menu here and slicked this up. We support 37 blockchains at the moment on Oku. That number is only going up. I think we'll probably be at 45 by the end of the year, which is kind of wild. So regardless of what EVM chain you're on or pseudo EVM chain you're on, L1 and L2, come to Oku, find your chain on here. If it's not on here, send us a message and we'll try to prioritize getting it on here. But yeah, we support just about everything you could possibly want right now. I will pause there in case there's anything, Lenny and Nod, that you guys want to double click on. Yeah.
Do we have any questions from the audience regarding this before getting moves on?
So I see there's a question here from Gunther. How does Oku Trade provide security for smart contracts in the DeFi ecosystem? So Gunther, when you're using Oku's platform, we don't actually have, in the context of our swapping or bridging or on-off ramping, our own set of smart contracts. What we do is we partner with great teams like Enso and use their underlying infrastructure and platform that. But that's not to say we don't regard security with the highest importance. Lots of spooky things can still happen on front ends if you're not careful. So one of the best things that we do here, and let me request a route that actually is something that we can execute. One of the best things we do is we've integrated Blockade into the interface, and Blockade will actually do a check on the swap. So we do our simulated route, we'll do a Blockade check, and so we can do Enso down here, swap that, we're going to get our transaction confirmation. So you actually get this lovely confirmation that is actually from Blockade. Blockade is doing a check on the route to make sure it's safe. We think that it's not just on the onus on wallets, it's also the onus on interfaces to have good security practices. You can't see it right now, but Rabbi just popped up on my screen and wants me to sign an approval. So I'm doing that, and we'll give that a second. But yeah, while that goes, if you have any questions about the contracts or platforms that are integrated with Oku, you can go to our docs website and we have some more information on that there. Let's see here. Are there any other questions that are worth
Yep, there's one more.
going over?
There's one more. OQ has one of the cleanest dashboards and strongest analytics. It is possible to build automated strategies using Enso. Is this something that you're potentially looking at to add?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that we're looking at and interested in. There is a bajillion things that we're constantly doing. So actually, for a little context that I didn't mention it earlier, GFX and Oku is 25 people at the moment. About like 16 of that is like dedicated to Oku and its development. And one of the hard parts about Oku's platform is that we have this huge kind of horizontal space that we cover with all the different features, and then trying to make sure we're doing a good job at all these things. The current sprint that the team is on is really looking at where the error states are in the platform, where users are falling off in their flows, and really trying to polish the application. And this is something that in DeFi is particularly tricky. When you look at like a centralized platform like these teams, Coinbase, Binance, etc., and these are multi-thousand person organizations that have, they would have a whole team of people that are just dedicated to just this one swap interaction, and a whole nother team dedicated to this bridge one. And so we occasionally have to deprioritize and prioritize other things. And at the moment, we're really prioritizing just making the swap experience and error states flow and be very smooth. But I'm excited. On the World Chain mini app side, it's probably going to be the first place where we do some experimentation, and maybe we'll do some experimentation on the trade app here as well. So we'll see. Lots of fun things to explore.
Right, interesting. Maybe we can move on to the morpho interface now.
Let's do it. So on the morpho side of things, I already have this set up on World Chain over here, but we support a ton of different chains. What's nice about our UI is that you're getting all the top level information really quickly, and you can filter through what is important and what's not important to you. So we also have integrated Curedora's rating and grading system. So they're going through and actually grading a lot of these vaults, which is great. So that you can see as a user what has been checked by kind of one of the reviewers. Like this is kind of like DeFi's equivalent of like a ratings agency to see like who's doing a good job. You have your net APY, your base APY. There's some rewards in these things at the moment that detail the collateral assets that are in these things, and if we want to allocate some funds. Let's switch over to just World Chain though. Okay, so we're just looking at our World Chain vaults at the moment. This is what I was talking about, folks. If you've come to this podcast, I guess that's what we're calling it. If you come to this podcast to find some edge, this is your DeFi edge for the call. Where else can you earn 10.75% on your USDC doing like a relatively safe thing in the scheme of this crazy DeFi world that we're all in? This is a great opportunity for folks. So RE7, which is one of the main curators on the Morpho platform, that was the main curator on World Chain, run these. So we have the RE7 USDC, WLD, WETH, and Wrap Bitcoin vaults. About $30 million currently supplied in this thing. You can come over here and earn that rate. For folks who don't know a lot about Morpho, what's happening with the Morpho protocol is a bit different from what your experience might have been with an Aave. An Aave has the DAO that curates who can lend and borrow things in their platform to a preset market like list. Whereas Morpho, this is a completely open, permissionless idea. So the same way that you can go to Uniswap, which everyone listening to this probably has, and create a pool, you can go to Morpho and you can create your own vault or market. That being said, these are kind of still roles that people look to see like a more professional entity manage. So RE7 managing these funds that folks put inside of these vaults. And then if you come over to the borrower UI, we have all of these markets that are available, and RE7 is allocating the USDC from the vault into these USDC markets to be borrowed by folks. So for example, on the WETH side of things, someone can come over here and the current net APR is negative. Isn't that crazy? Negative to borrow dollars against your WETH. And you can put up your collateral, borrow that, manage your positions down here, etc. So I have some small test things on this wallet. I have a few other wallets where I'm certainly exercising on these yields here because they're pretty fantastic. And then of course, we didn't talk about the bridge UI, but if anyone wants to get over to World Chain from their existing chain, just go to our bridge app. You can see where to bridge over. But Lindy, as you were kind of mentioning earlier, this is one of the spots where we really should be doing some more with Enso, because we could have that single click of migrate from one place into morpho, and then put your leverage on to what you want and do some swaps in there as needed. And then what I'm particularly interested in is there's going to be some new really interesting vaults and markets come on to World Chain in the next few weeks here, probably in early September, where looping is going to be particularly important, or at least important in the sense that we expect a lot of people to want to do it. And I think that is where like using the bundler, etc., could be pretty nifty, and adding that to our interface here. Because right now this is still very much like our V1 or like V0 even like interface with Morpho. We have a lot more that we want to do here. We also have Vault Analytics. I don't know how important that is to the folks on the call here, but we can always talk about that too. Yeah, folks should really just come on here and just check it out. Lots of great opportunities here. I mean, also Bitcoin, where you're going to borrow dollars against Bitcoin at negative rates. I mean, it's crazy, guys. It's crazy. You can do it in size too. I mean, there's millions of dollars of liquidity here available for folks to do. So, yeah. Lindy, Nanad, where should we go from here?
I think this is super amazing that you have your own front end and everything is customizable. So we can even put in new actions that's not available on Morpho official front end. For
Exactly.
example, yeah, things like you mentioned, like looping, right? All these are things that Nana is working on and we have already shipped. Even things like flash loan. So for leverage, you can do it via manual looping. You can also do it via flash loans. Really up to you how you want to structure your strategy.
Yeah, the spot leverage trading is something that I really want to add to the platform. We've been focused on this kind of thing. I was about to say sprint. It's definitely not sprint. It's been like 6 months of us adding new advanced order types to the platform. But the next thing I want to do is spot leverage, because I think these things could really like play with each other. It's like, oh, if you have a stop loss order and you have leverage going at the same time, this is one of the rare instances where we actually said we need to go build the infrastructure because we couldn't find anyone that had stop loss orders and bracket orders on chain. So I would love to have like a Morpho experience where a user can say, okay, I'm going to put on 3x leverage on my ETH through other coin. I'm going to do it via Morpho. I'm going to click one button with Enso. Enso's going to wrap my leverage transaction, my borrow transactions, my new lend transactions in there. And it's going to set up a stop loss order too. So that way I can get stopped out, or I can set up a bracket order to take profit automatically, etc. So this is something I'm really interested in doing in the fall here. So hopefully we can get around to doing that.
Exactly. And one more thing that's really interesting to add that's not available on official Morpho as well is that you could repay your debt using collateral on another chain. So
Oh,
for
wow.
example, for example, users, right, they farm on many chains, and as a result, their liquidity is all over the place. So maybe they have one market here, one market there, and then suddenly there's a market volatility, and they realize that they're gonna get that their position is in danger, and they're gonna get liquidated anytime. But then their money is in collateral on another chain, and then how? There's a big problem. So if we have a one button for them to repay using the collateral and they don't have to get additional money from elsewhere, back borrow, steal or whatever, it'd be so cool.
That would be really cool. That's definitely something we should talk more offline about and see if we can bring that in.
Yeah, of course. I think Nana has been working on a whole page of lending actions. Are there any that I've missed out that you want to talk about more, Nana?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the page is in the docs. Let me quickly share my screen just to check it out. So we're actually. I just need to actually get it. I need you to stop sharing yours.
Oh, sorry about that. There you go.
No worries. Just a second. Okay, so when we go to use cases here, we got plenty of different routes, including cross-chain operations, basic stuff, basic swaps, leverage loops, and the first one that we're really diving in deeply and providing different routes for people to explore is the lending markets. So as we spoke, okay, that swap we're not there yet, but for example, Zap2 Pay, this is sort of a sample that somebody can use to build this out on their backend, really, as a starter for use cases such as that. And you can just find a bunch of different use cases that we have here. I don't intend to go through them all, but it pretty much gives you a nice way to kickstart those sorts of operations. And honestly, we don't talk a lot about the bundler API, so I would like to actually use a little moment to see what it is, also for our audience. So this is like what we're seeing here is a more elaborate blueprint what you want to do with your tokens. So here you would just specify an array of operations, actions as we call them. So this would be on the Aave v3 protocol. We want to redeem, and you specify your token in, your token out, and the amount. And then you want to do a swap. You just say Enso route from this token to that token. Now, what's really cool about this is that you can, let's say, pipe the amount that came up by this operation into some of the future operations. So in the end, we're saying, okay, I want to deposit into Aave v3, and I want to use the output of this route operation. So it's a nice way to have dynamic amounts, and this is actually getting calculated in the runtime when it happens. As the transaction executes this part, we're actually using that particular value that resulted in there. So long story short, you can come to the use cases here in the docs. That's docs, and so build, and you can find a lot of useful stuff to kick things off. And for developers, this is also like there's this point where we also need to make a decision if we're integrating something in the front end or back end. These routes that are more complex, I think those belong in the back end more than not. And that's actually enabling teams to build more complex features that are, let's say, deployed more safely on behind an API. So,
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing, and that was really cool. Were you saying something? Sorry, I interrupted.
no, I'm actually, I had a little question for Getty. So when we talk about, the front end, back end split, like how much of your logic is actually in the front end, and how much do you keep tucked away behind the back end? And I did I did do a little bit of developer tooling and inspected the page, so I saw that some stuff's behind the back end. So curious.
Yeah, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, the vast majority of complexity is in the back end. So like you can't get away from having a back end, no matter what you do, I think, unless you're like willing to sacrifice a lot in the user experience. It's just there's a lot of reasons. But like, for example, so if you come to the Oku site, what's in the front end versus the back end? Order routing. When you come to cross circuit order, you're making a request. It goes to the server. The server is actually processing your order and starting the job to like find you the best quote. Same thing that happens with bridging. We actually just recently, like a month or so ago, upgraded the whole order system for swapping. We're going to be doing the same for bridging. We just started that sprint. We have on the Uniswap and Morpho side, you have these contracts on chain that have all this state in it. It's only on chain if you want to bring any of that into the platform. So when users come to the platform, and folks that are listening to this, that's when you think about how many tokens are in a pool, how many tokens are in the pool historically, where are the positions of this pool, are the positions open or closed, what are the range of those positions, what's the performance of those positions. If I want to run a backtest to see what my theoretical position that I made 7 days ago of this makeup, what would it look like today? where are the tokens, what are the token logos, how many user balances, like all these things have to happen elsewhere. So in the grand scheme of things, like it really is like the front end's cool. It's pretty, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done there, but the beef of the platform is really actually what enables the front end. And then in addition to that, we have then, partners where we bring in. So like one of the unique examples here is probably our on-off ramp partner, which is, the bridge.xyz folks that acquired by Stripe. They've been in the platform now for about a year and a half. And a lot of like, if you find a DeFi platform that has an on-off ramp in it, it is not going to be an embedded experience. It's going to be some sort of pop-up widget. It's going to break the user experience. What I like to tell folks is that if you went to Apple's website and we're going to make a purchase, they're not going to throw a pop-up window at you to like put in your like banking information. Like that would feel so terrible from a design standpoint. So why do we do this in DeFi? Like, why is this considered okay? So we took the time to like take their whole API, take their backend, make our essentially like mini layer above it, to interact with it, and then built the whole user experience to make it feel like the user stays in the application and that this was a more seamless experience. So in the scheme of on-off ramping, it's always hard to make something like that involves KYC and all these things. And then, yeah, the other really big thing on the backend side of things is like we have an accounts system. So another thing that we hold a strong belief on is that in the Web2 world, you see a lot of personalization in leading applications. I can log in here. I can personalize my account. If it's my social media, I have the things I follow. If this is my banking application, I see my history. Like these things that we kind of take for granted in Web 2 that are actually done quite well, that in Web 3 don't really exist, right? If I go to the Uniswap website, the idea that I have an account or history doesn't really exist. If I go to really any of the major swapping or routing bridging platforms, it doesn't really exist. You come to Oku, you have a whole profile page where you get to manage all of your settings to your liking. We have some pro users that come on here and say, you know what? I understand how to manage my approvals and the risk of approvals that I'm giving much better than the average user. So I'm okay to set things to unlimited because I'll come back later and I'll, get rid of those unlimiteds. But at least for the moment, it's something I'm okay with, or I'll make sure I have no balances of these things. Or I want to make my transaction deadline instead of 30 minutes, 5 minutes, all these kind of little decisions. You have users settings that will actually persist from device, etc. Your order history, your bridge history, and we'll be adding much more there. We have Oku points and Oku XP that'll be rolling out very soon. That's users are already accruing right now unknowingly. So there's a whole lot going on. I wish we could only do the front end. That would make our lives much easier.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that. So backend is the place where the magic happens.
Yeah, in large part. There's definitely, I think for what it's worth, like we need to make more magic on the front end. So we can say that is like another place. This is a big thing we're working on right now. We're like transition states, the little tiny bits, it's like if anyone's ever like, worked on a project themselves or as a kid, it's always like that last like few percent of like finishing the project that you're on. That is always the hardest. And we're kind of in this phase of like, we have this great feature set up right now. We just really should focus on smoothing it out, making the transitions, the loading states just feel that much better. And it's going to make a huge difference to the user experience.
Yeah. And actually this ties in with the conversation you and I had a while back that actually was the basis for the case study we published about how Oku and Enso work together. And it appears that those kinds of interventions, making those settings available to people, making those histories available to people, is actually what's bridging the gap between centralized exchanges and DeFi world, which is a big gap to fill.
Right. If you go to everyone who listening to this probably has at least one sex that they're onboarded to. And if you go there, the idea that you have an order history is table stakes. Of course I have an order history. What do you mean? Why wouldn't I have an order history? That'd be a weird thing. And in DeFi, this is a standard to not have order history. It's just like, what? I have my page where I deposit my things. I have my settings. I can export my CSVs. Like there's so many basic things that the CeFi world does that we haven't even started yet in DeFi. There's work that we still need to do. So, granted, again, these are multi-thousand person organizations that we're competing with. But I think in the end, the Web3 system is simply so much more efficient, going back to the Lego thesis, that it is inevitable. It is inevitable for an Oku or one of the couple of competitors that we have to ultimately overtake one of these majors. And I think really the only person at the moment that has a chance of like not being overtaken by a DeFi platform is maybe like a Coinbase or an OKX, like these teams that are particularly spending a lot of time building out their chains, building out their DeFi experiences and saying, okay, I'm going to build a moat around me. And if I can adopt DeFi fast enough, then maybe I can, shave my dinosaur. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that's probably also futile. So we're coming for them. We're closing the gap as fast as we can.
Good to hear. Good to hear. And Enzo is really privileged to be supporting you on closing the gap between Sexes and DeFi. So yeah, we've come to the end of our podcast, and there are no further questions from the audience. So we'd just like to emphasize again, for the users, please follow us on our social media. Handles are Enzo Build and OQ Trade. And for Enzo developers, if you would like to build some stuff, if you're inspired by this podcast, we also have a TG group, a public TG group where you can come in and ask us any sort of questions you want. We have people there 24/7 to reply your questions and to help you to build whatever that you need to build. So again, thank you very much, Getty, for being here. Thank you, Nana, for sharing your doubts, and thank you very much to the audiences for being here with us today. So we look forward to see what you build, and of course, for the audiences who have not tried OQ Trade before, definitely you should do it immediately after this podcast.
Thanks, Lindy. Yeah, thanks guys for having
Thanks
me.
again, everybody.